Jess, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
It's so exciting to have you here. I'm very much looking forward to this. We've got a lot to dive into. A little bit about your app that you guys have been working on and just released. But I thought we could start off with a little bit about yourself. If you could give us a little introduction, tell us what led you to become interested in this condition and develop this app, and yeah, a little bit more about your story.
Cool. Yeah, well, I guess like there's a few points to like how I founded this tech startup because we're a startup. For those who aren't in this world, it just where you think you have a technology solution, so you want to build something like an app or a web app or something like that. But yeah, my story has sort of a few different starts. I think the story that's probably relevant for this audience is I did actually have ME/CFS 12 years ago, quite severely for maybe like 2.5 years. And then I actually, a few years later, had kids, and my one son was diagnosed with a really serious type of cerebral palsy. And when he was diagnosed, I actually went to the appointment with this like big stack of medical papers, and the consultant was like, "Don't even bother reading them. There's actually nothing you can do to help. Like, there's no surgery, there's no medication. Like, he probably won't be able to go to school or learn or anything. Good luck and goodbye." And I think because I'd had ME/CFS, and I think when you've had an experience when the medical system doesn't have the answers, like one, it's horrible when you first have that experience
Mhm.
where you don't, the feeling. But because I'd had it, I was like, is this true? I kind of straight away was like, I think, is there other things out there? Because we tried a few small things and he was just had amazing gains. And so, yeah, I really, really, right at the start of that experience, I found some, like, I'm really into research. I will just quote to start with that. But I found some treatment online. I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what was out there other than reading a few papers. But I found some treatment that was really low risk, and I just ordered it late one night, and it arrived in the post, and I got this hospital physio to come over. I convinced her to try it. And my son was like almost 2, and he just lay on the floor all the time. And we put this like bodysuit on him, and he instantly sat. And then we took it all off, and he sat perfectly. And to this day, he sits perfectly. And I was just like, what? Like, life change moment. And like, it was 100% on me who knew nothing really about this sort of movement disorder, which is similar to Parkinson's. But it just sort of was like this huge invitation that there's things that we can do to really impact his life, but it's completely on me to find them. And when I had ME/CFS, I had real problems with my vision, so I wasn't able to even do the research for myself that I was able to do for my son years later. So just went on this huge rabbit hole, like where breakthrough health information, like I was finding pieces everywhere. And many times I still to this day feel like a private investigator. It was like, I hear this comment over here in a Facebook group and I read this paper, and then we ended up traveling around the world to these clinics and just finding these pieces, and we kept finding more and more things. But really it was this moment where I was in this conference for this big international research conference, the first time they'd ever let people with lived experience attend. And I was in this one session with this world leader, and she's just doing like a state of the evidence type talk. And I at that time was reading probably 10 papers a week, like a lot of really trying to get my head around things. And she just listed one thing after another I'd never heard about. And actually in the cerebral palsy space, there's a lot of breakthroughs that are quite inexpensive. And they're kind of like cognitive based things that are really impactful for movement disorders. And I just put my hand up and I said, I shouldn't have to fly around the world to learn about treatments. And at the time, we had a big following on social, and I was like, no one in the community knows about this. Like, I'm going to build this. Like, this should be on my phone, and I'm going to solve
Mhm.
this problem. Like, this is ridiculous. Um, so yeah, it started the journey of being a startup founder, and took our house deposit and decided to start a startup and see how we could solve this. I mean, who needs a house? It's boring. But yeah, that's how we started. So really knowing nothing, I had started things before, so I guess I am a builder. Like I love building solutions. I think also having been unwell, like it's such a privilege when you get your health back when you don't know if you're going to get it back. Um, and yeah, I just saw this problem all over around me. Like a friend had MS, another friend had stage 4 cancer, like another friend had an autoimmune disease, and like all of them had this problem, which was breakthrough health information lives
Yeah.
everywhere. and it's not being captured quickly enough. So like,
Mm.
research papers, trials, like living with amazing clinicians, but we're not capturing it fast enough. And sometimes there's not even the ability to capture it if all of the stars don't align, if you don't have
Yeah.
the population size and you don't have the funding for the phase 3 trial, or all about this. And so, yeah, that's the problem we want to solve, and the problem that sort of like I'm obsessed with.
That is amazing. A hell of a story as well. There's a lot of there's so many points, so many threads there that I'd like to pick up on. So we'll come back to the app and how it works in itself in a sec. But I'd like to delve back to how this relates as well, how your lived experience with an illness with ME/CFS and your experience with this problem as well that we have in the space, because so many people watching this will be all too aware of, you see studies or you see potential treatments that might be of interest that you see on Twitter, or maybe you see it in a Facebook group. Maybe you came across a paper. But the trouble is, you're not necessarily sure whether that treatment is valid, whether, it's just an N of one that helped one person and isn't going to help anybody else. You see a new clinical trial that's happening, but you have to wade through pages and pages of clinicaltrials.gov to find them. And in many ways, the onus becomes on you in these sort of conditions, because it's about how much and then many people are going to their doctors or general health practitioner and saying, hey, have you seen this study, and they're the ones who are informing them. So what was did you have a very similar experience then with that when it came to ME/CFS? How did you approach your kind of research? And
laughing because there was so little back then. Like it was
yeah.
like, you see a doctor and it's like one of one. Like, back then you like meet people in real life who have the condition and you're like grab onto them, and like literally like our best friends of our life was someone I met back then who had which we called back then chronic fatigue. Because that's how desperate we were for friends, like to like understand. So I think back then, like it felt like being in the dark. Like I truly think like I tried to approach it analytically. One of my biggest symptoms was a bit like light and
Yeah.
sensitivity. So I couldn't ever look at a screen. So I'd have to it was just really hard to find things. It was very haphazard, my research. Like I think I just had big gaps. So I think like even like what you mentioned and the problem of even the overwhelm, I don't think I was anywhere near. I didn't even know what was on the table. Like I didn't even heard the term flare up or crash, like, or
Yeah. Okay.
spoons, or like I mean, that was the experience back then. And friends I've had from that time have had a really similar experience where
When
there
was
was
this?
just
Sorry, just for
like
context.
13 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like you see a doctor and they say one thing and you see another and they say something else, and you don't like, I didn't really get a clear diagnosis for many, many months. And, um, you know, the story that many people have, like we didn't have social media, there weren't Facebook groups back then. How I navigated it was I documented all my symptoms. I documented all my results. Um, I luckily found one doctor who was involved in a research center, which was trying to find, at the time, they were trying to find a test for chronic fatigue syndrome, they called it back then. Um, so I was very, very lucky to find someone who validated me,
Yeah.
um, which made me just understand. He was like, yeah, this is happening to many people. Like, let's look. And he was so like thorough, and it was like, he didn't ever push me, like make me speed up. He wanted to hear everything because he's an amazing doctor. So yeah, I think back then, I think, and the funny thing is like some of the things I did in my recovery, like it was so haphazard. I think I didn't know what pacing was. Like
Yeah.
I had to discover pacing through punish. I mean, I must say there was one thing said to me, it'll be interesting to your audience, not to open up this, because I didn't know anything. I saw this one doctor, I remember we had to wait like 6 months, and he was like an expert of this area. And I saw him and he's like, I had to drive hours and it was like $800. And he's a doctor, like specialist. And he was like, yeah, there's really nothing except find some purpose in your life, he told me. And I was like, I had so much purpose before I got sick. I worked for the Red Cross. I lived in Southeast Asia. I had an amazing job. I was like, what are you talking about? The second he said was gradual exercise. And you know, it's funny. He could have said graded, but I didn't know what graded exercise was. So I interpreted it to be gradual, which
Yeah.
actually meant I learnt to pace.
Yeah.
And then I just,
Okay.
but now I know all this sort of stuff that's come out, having come into this learning from people with lived experience more recently. I'm so happy he didn't tell me that, because I would have like then listened to him and pushed my body and not learnt to listen to my body,
Hmm. So
which is so
inadvertently,
hard.
it kind of came off. Okay, though, through no help of his. So in just because all of my viewers will be probably shouting and screaming, saying, "Well, how did you get better?" So maybe you could give us as well, before we dive onto the app and everything. What were some of the things that did kind of like contribute to your recovery? Was it something you did? Was it time? Was it a combination? What was
Yeah,
your kind of journey through from 13 years ago, being very ill, and then being at the position where you are now, where kids, startup founder, fairly
that's
full on
right.
life.
I do work 14 hours a day. And like,
Yeah.
to just give validation to everyone out there, I work as many hours as possible and parent, and nothing compares to how I used to feel back then from talking to someone for 10 minutes. So, like I think I know that feeling. Like,
Yeah.
I literally think I have to not sleep for 24 hours and work, and then I might start feeling like, but yeah, what did I do? I think that obviously just prefacing it like everybody in that, um, I don't think I don't think I felt like I found the silver bullet. Like, I think I definitely tried a bunch of things. Probably some of my own scientific thoughts now. Maybe I think I see certain things, but like I did a combination. I did find a medication, and it's nortriptyline. I know there's like a variant that's often prescribed. It is probably like my personal wonder drug. Like, it was a 60% impact. It wasn't 100%, but I to this day need this medication.
Hmm.
Um, the second thing is I did a whole bunch of things. I really did pace. So I moved into I was living in Southeast Asia. I lived in a rural place in New Zealand with some really good friends. And my partner, and I rested. Like, I didn't, again, it was horrible because I felt like I just gave my whole career up, and I couldn't read a book or do anything like that. So that part was all really hard, obviously, but I did really rest, and I learned how to rest. The second thing is I did do gradual movement when I had the health. But I think I also did fasting, and I also did a whole food diet, and I'm really into fiber science, like the science of the microbiome. So I don't know whether that played a part, because my partner thinks that was a real turning point when I really, um, but I don't feel like it was like one day to another. And I don't know your own story, but I think it was many months. Um, yeah, that I sort of, yeah, if that's helpful.
So sort of stacking these different, yeah, I think that's very consistent with a lot of people. It's kind of this, yeah, consistent contribution of different things, and playing around. And with the
Mm.
medication, then, was that something that you kind of, did you just see that online and experimented and thought, I'll give that a go? Or did you get that very much, you went to see a
Oh,
doctor and tested,
I
prescribed?
literally, well, I went to like, I went to a GP first. I didn't know what the word flare up was.
Yeah.
But I was in extreme pains. I used to get pain from like going in a car or moving my eyes, and he just said, take paracetamol, see you later. And I was like, I'm in agony. So I ended up through my own way finding this private neurologist, and he was really good. Like, he gave me this medication, and it
Mm,
was an amazing experience. And it took me like 2 months maybe to like get it up there. But yeah, it was all luck, like total luck that I met him and got that.
mm-hmm.
No research on my part, because yeah, I didn't know of anything. And I think I read like one paper on fasting, like, and like I'm not an advocate of fasting. Like, don't go take this and go fast. I don't know if it had any impact, but there is some interesting microscience in the
Yeah.
microbiome, maybe. But it's also really risky. Like, I probably, yeah, it's really risky for people. So don't go and fast before doing this.
But I guess, though, this very much ties in nicely with, yeah, with coming back to the app, because it, for so many people who are searching for some kind of answers, and there's now, unlike before, there is actually an abundance of different stories, whether it be personal or lived experience, research, clinical trials. There is some stuff out there, and there is some good quality stuff out there, but it's hidden
Mm,
amongst a lot of kind of
mm,
random and
mm,
not so good stuff. So how does the app then, obviously for cerebral palsy, but also for ME/CFS, how does that then help people to understand what's out there and then go to their doctors and have a bit more insight and direction as to where they're going?
Yeah, I mean, or even start doing it themselves. Like, so many
Yeah.
people are doing lifestyle. Or we did this really, we did like an early sort of survey of sort of different health consumers about a year ago. I think we surveyed like 800 people, and like 84% had tried major treatments without their medical team.
Hmm.
So like people are doing it, as we all know, we do what we have to do. What we do, what the product offers right now, and like I think this is why I love thinking about the problem, because we're starting down that road, and I think we hope to keep trying to solve it. Is the first thing we do is we do surface all that's there. So I think it's particularly useful for someone earlier on in the diagnosis,
Hmm.
who doesn't know sort of the different variety of things. And there's this value that we have, which is around nuance. Like I think a lot of health platforms or websites have to be quite like vanilla health information, we often say, because it has to be like yes or no. And so it misses out the 45 other things that people are trying. That's kind of the really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Like so in cerebral palsy, people are really interested in like stem cells and neuromodulation and all these sort of different things. Yeah, so I think the first thing we do is we surface that information. The second thing we do is we tag everything. So if you do see a comment, you can actually click on the tag. Let's say the tag is, let's say it's, I don't know, and what's a popular, I mean, there's so many diets in long code and ME/CFS in the app already. I think there's like 11 that I've seen already tagged.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's say
Like
the
carnivore,
antihistamine. Oh
vegan,
my gosh, yeah. Let's say
antihistamine. Yeah,
antihistamine. Like say you say antihistamine, that's the tag, is you can go in there and you actually can see all the variety of content on that tag. You can see different papers, different reviews, different crowd questions. So that's what the product, like the product does that right now is we surface different ideas. You can find it all in one piece. But we've already built a really cool next level, which is actually, is this useful for me? And really trying to dig a bit deeper. So we haven't launched that yet, but we have an AI experience, because one of the things the app does is we just capture so many things that people are sharing. And we went live a week ago, and we've already just got thousands of health insights that people have shared. But it's in itself, like that's overwhelming to have so many insights. And so the next step for us is categorizing and then personalizing that through AI and just through sort of filters. Um, yeah, but because yeah, it is a really good problem to have, which we always talk about is, if you took every person in the world with long COVID and ME/CFS and understood what they were learning, imagine what that would do for the condition. Like if you
hmm.
could know everything from genetics to knowledge to all these sort of experiences, what treatments they've tried, what hasn't worked, all the heterogeneous complexities. Um, but it would be a lot of information, right? And so then you'd
Yeah.
need to actually analyze the knowledge from that. So even if, in the app right now, like we've had like hundreds of people write treatment reviews of things they're trying. And so the next step for us is aggregating that in sort of like general findings. So like what type of users are liking this, or what people are finding is useful, not useful, to
Hmm.
trying to make that more richer. And even every single day we have polls in the app around the condition and your own experience. And we're patient first. So like, a lot of the times in health research, people ask questions and then
Hmm.
you never like know the answer. Like you can be part of research. And I mean, I think everyone should be part of research because,
Hmm.
if you can, and if you're lucky enough to live close, if it's an in-person, but you don't actually often know, like you don't get anything often back. I mean, you might get something back in how you're treated and actually getting some care, which is why it's so
Hmm.
exciting. But we sort of do a poll, you see results and you get an insight from a recent paper. But what we actually want to do then is start doing like a state of the condition each month to give everybody in the community sort of new insights that we're uncovering
Okay.
together.
Like a
Yeah,
rundown
yeah.
of kind of what's happening. That'd be very useful. And so a quick
Yeah.
question in terms of a couple of questions actually. So in terms of surfacing, I know you mentioned that you surface news and research and stuff. Where does that come from? Is that exclusively from users putting it in, or is it sort of like taken from the web as well? And then secondly, in terms of verification. So in terms of obviously user experience, you'll see that from people leaving reviews. But in terms of clinical papers, research trials, how do you guys ensure that good quality research data and trials are appearing on there as well for people?
Yeah, so there's two ways that we do it, and it is a work in progress. So um, the first thing we do is probably 50% of the content is user generated, and the other 50% is AI and a research assistant. So
Mm-hmm.
we are at a point in history, like if you know, I think you can have two different feelings when you think of AI. Like it can sound so like overwhelming or scary, or you maybe you're using ChatGPT and you love it. Um, so we like one of the people who supported us is one of the founders of Google Maps, and he actually hired our engineers, and so they're just fantastic people who want to do good in the world and also technologically amazing. And so we've been able to use generative AI to do like a daily update across the condition. So what are any new papers? What are any new trials? But then actually to audit that information. And that's where like we're doing a little bit of iteration because um, so we look at things like how reliable is it? And actually when you come into the app every day, there's new papers added and there's like a summary, which is in plain English. And it actually says, what is the study? What did they find? Well, how relevant is this for a health consumer and how reliable was the study? Um, and I think it's not to say we need to ignore studies that aren't reliable. I think you just got to know what you're looking at. Like if there's a study and it's a case study of one person, like
Mm-hmm.
that actually might be life changing. Like it might be, it might be an incredible breakthrough. Like just as a really interesting personal story, like I think it's interesting. My son was incontinent for a really long time, and I listened to a podcast with sort of a leading thinker about this new study out of UCLA, really small study published, you know, a handful of kids, and of using like a TENS machine on your back. It's kind of this discovery around the motor planning actually being
Yeah.
in on your spine. Non-invasive, $300 machine, and we tried everything. He went to school in nappies, and we literally tried it because I happen to know people and got sort of the protocol, and he became fully continent, like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's only a few papers on that, but in turn two, we actually had one of the world leaders write a review on that treatment of why it's so interesting. Because even though the research is quite slow, there's scientific reasonings why it's called neuromodulation when you use that
Mm-hmm.
sort of stimulation on your spine. But yeah, so I think it's definitely a work in progress. If you're a new user in the app right now, like we are able to sort of turn things up and down because we want to be able to give people the personalized things that they are interested in and that's
Mm-hmm.
relevant for them. But the other challenge is just the amount of content and the amount of new things that are coming out. I mean, particularly long COVID, I mean, and a little bit in ME/CFS, which yeah, we're trying to bring to the surface more as well.
Well, that's good news to hear that there's lots of new stuff, and
So
that's
much,
a nice. I mean, maybe
but
not so much for your engineers and whoever's filtering through it, but in general, it's good news, I'd say. I think
yeah, yeah.
it's
We also like research resistance involved. Like someone's got a PhD is also trying to like support some of these pieces, but you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's yeah, it's super. It's very valuable for people to be able to see stuff that is tailored, and I think there is a real problem, especially in conditions where people are very much desperate and they want answers, but when they go to their healthcare or their physician and they don't really get that much back in return. And in many ways, it is kind of understandable because if we think about the process for new treatments, whether it be for whatever condition, there's a whole process you've got to go through. In the initial testing, you've got to then go through phase 1, 2, 3. You've then got to get it
Yeah,
verified by NICE or FDA approved wherever you are, and then it's got to go through that and start being distributed by doctors, and then it's got to be fed back into the medical system and the education and training so that people
yeah,
can understand what actually works and what doesn't, and only then you're going to have the doctors and people coming through who actually understand and recognize these treatments. So
yeah.
in an essence, then the app is allowing people to see what is out there, give you an overview of how reliable this potentially is, how in plain English breakdown of what is actually going on, how other people have reacted to it, and then people can come to their own conclusions, whether it be looking to try things themselves or whether it
That's
be
right.
going to the
That's right.
doctor and saying, look, have you thought about this before?
That's right. And we might bring in some things like we might bring in a button that says like, is this relevant for me? Like that's probably something in the next few months we're going to experiment with. Just a few things to
Hmm.
help people to sort of clear through the the mess of like all the things that are coming up.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult to know, and like exactly what you were talking about before, like it's like the research that what you talked about, that whole process, like there are papers that are published that are like the knowledge translation gap. Like it's wild that there can be studies done and they know there's really good promise with something and it
Hmm.
would take, the number is 15 years. That's what they say it takes from something to go from evidence to impact. And that's the reason I created Turn to is because what if that treatment or that intervention was like or health breakthrough? So it can be saying it can be learning what pacing is. Like thank goodness
Yeah.
social media is helping with some of those things. Um, but what if there was a really helpful thing on your microbiome? Like what if there
Hmm.
was? Like, does it need to be 15 years? And will it be 15? It could be longer because there may not be the funding to do those large studies soon
Hmm.
enough.
How do you, a quick question on how you balance between, because obviously, like you said, with the TENS machine and non invasive stuff that's relatively low risk, obviously, it's pretty much nothing to lose type thing when you try things like that. Um, but then obviously, there's certain drugs and supplements and things like that that obviously do carry a little bit more risk and need to be a little bit more careful. Is there something in the app where it kind of like, you know, helps people to understand that this is either non-invasive or more invasive, or is it a case of you're kind of presenting the information and then saying this is a breakdown of what supposedly happened in the study, and then people can kind of take from that what they will.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's probably more like the second example, but
Yeah.
we have some ways we're looking at like putting in some AI buttons of like, what does this involve? Is this use like we also have treatment summaries, so we do sort of collate all the knowledge in these more treatment pages. Um, yeah, but it's interesting. It's an interesting issue things to solve because we also are having come into long COVID and ME/CFS. We are going to build. We haven't built it yet. It's in our sprint is to deal with like controversial or community notes because there is a lot of different treatments floating around. So
Yeah, there's some rogue stuff out there.
some rogue stuff out there and different motivations. And I think lived
Yeah,
experience just it has to be leading this. So we actually work with a whole bunch of people with lived experience guiding this. And that's how we're modeling all of our next condition growth is getting sort of some strong advocates to lead and teach
for
us.
sure. And where it
Yeah.
is so heterogeneous, it is good to get a variety of different opinions, because I know some people who have tried certain things and they
Yeah.
swear it's been a game changer, and vice versa.
Mm.
But for me, it hasn't done anything, or the other way around. Um, in terms of the long term vision, then obviously it's hard to say right now, because there'll be a million iterations, a
I
million
can
things
tell
like
you what
that.
it is, Harry. I know what it
Okay,
is.
okay, right, go ahead then.
Super ambitious. I mean, our mission is to speed up breakthroughs for every person. So, like, and like, how do you do that? Like, how do you right now, wherever you are in the world, get access to something that could improve your quality of life today?
Yeah.
Like, that is our mission. So, is that accessing, knowledge? Is that accessing lifestyle based knowledge now? Is that knowing what your GP can prescribe you now? Is that accessing maybe an incredible sort of educational. I don't know in long COVID MECF. It's often in cerebral palsy. It's like a intensive physio approach or um, whatever the case is. But it's like accessing it now. Like how do you speed it up for every person? And so
Mhm.
yeah, for us the app, and we already have a really cool AI bet that we want to offer people the best answers you can have to your questions, and we're going to be building the one-stop shop. So like a web-based experience of every trial, every product, every and like yes,
Mhm.
personalized, and like what's local, what's available. Um, yeah, because unfortunately, we can't all be part of the latest trials. Like,
Yeah.
but sometimes we can learn from them, or sometimes we can access parts of them, or maybe they're happening near us and we don't even know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so
So
it's
you
a big one.
a big one for sure.
It's a big vision. Every person
everyone cured.
in the world.
uh,
That's right.
I like it. I like ambition. It's good, and I think we need these kind of people in the space as well. People with, I think I'm a big believer in, building things and using business in a positive way to try and accelerate breakthroughs and improve qualities of life. So for those who are going onto the app, what can you expect to find there? So obviously you said clinical trials, user lived experiences. What else is on there when you first go on?
Yeah, so when you first come in right now, like when you're on board, you'll be asked to follow tags or treatments you're interested in. So the idea here is just to like curate things that are important for you now. You'll be offered one of our core experience in the app is called the Daily Drop, with this idea that you get 5 to 10 posts a day of things that are new. So it's new, maybe it's a new trial, maybe it's a new event, maybe it's a breakthrough someone's sharing. Maybe we've just launched professional AMAs, so we've got a bunch of cool sort of leading professionals who come in and answer. And again, that's because our mission is to open up breakthroughs, and not everyone can access the best consultants in the world. So yeah, that's the kind of core experience, is you every day see new things that you're interested in. And we are this week actually building a new experience for search. And then next week we're actually building some more personalized ways to get involved, but we're very early. Like we've been live a week. We've had like, I think maybe 1,400 people come in. I think we had 80,000 post views. We've had such incredible content shared. So, we really are learning with the community. Like the coolest thing, building with, like half our team have lived experience. The best apps in the world build with people. Like that's, and that's how our whole team is valued. So I think if people just know that, like we have a public, it feels really scary to do it. We just a few days ago launched a public site where we just have our features, and you can vote up, vote down of what you want us to do next. And yeah, like one of the number one thing we're building right now, people were like wanting to change how the sort of feed happens. So fun times.
For sure. I mean, iteration is the best. We were speaking about this beforehand. There's this kind of illusion, I think, with great tech products that you work on it for years and years, and then you suddenly drop, and everything. You've got the perfect Uber or whatever it is. But in the reality, it's actually very much the opposite. It's constant iteration, feedback from the users as well. A final one from me then. So in terms of, again, we're talking about pushing things forward, helping to accelerate this access to research for everyone. Are you looking to utilize some of the user and lived experience to hand over to guide research and to help direct people in that kind of direction? Because obviously, putting big clinical trials on is a tough task, and you need some kind of direction. So will you be hoping to utilize some of the data that you have from the user side to help steer and direct research like that?
Yeah, there's two ways we're looking at it. Like the one is we want to be the bridge. So we don't want to, often there's like a big industry around different health conditions, and often it's going through health professionals, not through patients. So we want to rather be the bridge where patients can see what opportunities are out there and choose to be part of things or not. And in terms of the data, like the moment all the data is obviously all de-identified, it actually it goes back to consumers first. So we are patient first. So we do aggregate knowledge, and we'll do that more and more over the next few weeks and months and give it back to people. But of course, we want to contribute that to what is researched. Again, we are really new to long COVID and ME/CFS, but in the cerebral palsy space, people with lived experience actually have a way less positive experience. Like that's what I've learned coming to long COVID and ME/CFS. People with lived experience it's a lot of engagement has initially been around like fundraising stories. They're just not as interested in people leading or guiding anything. So what it means is there's just huge pieces of research that the consumers care. We say consumers, patients, wherever you are in the world, there's different words, but there's just massive bodies that aren't being investigated. They're just researchers aren't interested in what the community is talking about. So we are ready with our product with cerebral palsy. So for the second most popular treatment in the cerebral palsy app is like a very low risk but it's a home-based, it's a type of intensive therapy with like, it's like a physio type, kind of kinetic type thing. And it's quite new and it's very, very popular. And there's no research that's been done on it, like not one paper. And because it's the second most popular, we have all this evidence. And actually, one of the world leaders in this space I met, and this person said to me they're now going to study this treatment because of all the evidence that's been
That's
coming
awesome.
through the app. So like we want that, like, and the community wants that. And what that means is maybe insurance will start paying for that because all this evidence is coming out of these lived experience and these kids and these adults who are trying this treatment, but they're not getting funded for it. So yeah, that was a really, really great, one great story that's happened recently.
That's very true. I think I see a lot of these kind of tests done by users at home sort of popping up, and some of them seem to have some quite interesting weight to them. And if we can then feed that back into the medical system and allow that research to go forward, as you said, and help kind of direct, maybe it leads to different discoveries, or maybe it leads to that actually being provided for in insurance, like you said, I think that can only be a positive thing.
Yeah.
Um, Jess, thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll add a link to the app below. I think it's very, very exciting what you guys are doing, and yeah, I look forward to following the story going forward.
Cool. Thanks, Harry. It was super fun.